How's it going? In today's video, we are going to be studying and looking at the recent price jumps for Fusion Strike. Right here we have the Gengar VMAX. We will be looking at the Gengar VMAX PSA 10 data for the last, not only the last year, but the all-time PSA 10 data to talk about why it's important to maybe chase after those big name cards, those popular Pokemon species. But we're also going to be looking at the set overall. We'll be looking at the chase cards in the set. And then we're going to be studying right here this 42% gain in the past month. Price points for Fusion Strike. I'm sure if you guys have seen a couple videos on this topic already. However, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into not only all the cards, but also how is it that these Pokemon card sets can spike so fast in price points when the set is not even that old yet. It's from 2021 October 30th. We're in 2025 May, so it is actually coming close to its 4 years in October. So it's about 3.5 years old right now. And so let's go ahead and jump right on into the video. The total set data is super important. $1,470, so $1,470 right there. If you compare that to other sets, Lost Origin, another highly coveted set, Lost Origin actually only has $1,225 in total set value, and the set is $449, whereas the set for Fusion Strike is $678. So it does have more value than Lost Origin, but this is only new. If we look at the all-time data, if you were to look at the set value for since last year, you would be surprised to see that the set value for Fusion Strike was actually slightly less than Lost Origin. And the reason why it's jumped up is mainly because of these three cards right here. You had this card, it was a $60 card for the longest time. This card was a $25, the Mew V. The Mew V Max, like I said, a $60 card. Now it's $136. The Espeon VMAX was in the high 150s. Now it's a $314 card. And that Gengar VMAX was in the 200s to 300s for a long period of time. So we're going to go ahead and check out the all-time data for some of these cards. And let's go ahead and just start jumping right on into it, you guys, because this is a whole lot of information, but we're going to try and dissect it in this video right here. So if we look at the last year, this chart's all messed up. We're just going to look at the last month. All throughout April, this set was $480 to $70. And then look at May 2nd, it hit $500. And now it's $678. And the reason why is the volume. Look at the last few sales: 799, 810, 795, 742. This is absolutely crazy, you guys. There's not a whole lot on the market either. There's only 30 listings, and half of those listings aren't even true listings, and some of them are 36 packs. So a lot of people are holding on to their Fusion Strike as of right now. So let's go ahead and check out the all-time data right here. Again, this set came out October 2021. We can see that this set was in the 140s post-release and then went into the sub 100s. Now, the reason why I went into the sub 100s is a lot of people talk about, the lack of demand back then. The demand, during COVID was pretty big actually. And this was actually literally released after or during COVID in 2021, right? But at the same time, there was the COVID boom, right, in 2020 and 2021. And then they reprinted the set when demand kind of fell off. COVID kind of ended in 2021. Things were somewhat getting back to normal and everything. And then that's when the supply got dumped onto the market because people need a product. The printing machines were on pause during COVID. And then all of a sudden it was full force. And all this product got dumped onto the market. And people weren't collecting really Pokemon as much anymore. People didn't like the set. They didn't think the set was that good. And so it was sub $100. Look at that. All the way into 2022. Nearly all the way into 2023. In 2023, it barely broke $108. And that's already a year and a half post-release because the set came out October 2021. And this is January 2023. So that's about a year and a half. And then if we keep going throughout 2023, we see that it was in the 130s and 140s. And then not until December of 2023 did it still hit the 140s. And then in January, we see it get to the 150s. This is January of 2024. So a little bit over a year ago. And, Scarlet and Violet, people were interested in Scarlet and Violet. They were kind of, still kind of debating whether or not, Scarlet and Violet was even a good set. The Pokemon demand was not high yet. We didn't get to what we saw until people realized, okay, Sword and Shield is done in April of 2024 and in May of 2024. And that's when people started buying booster boxes from Sword and Shield, because we started getting into set 5 Temporal Forces, and then soon after Twilight Masquerade. And people were really excited about Pokemon. Greninja EX came out. Temporal Forces was a different set. Paradox Rift was kind of like a letdown for some people. There was so much supply. So people started going back to Sword and Shield because they realized, hey, eventually this project is going to dry up. I want to go ahead and collect the booster box. I don't have it in my collection. And then Pokemon 151 came out, right? Got even more people into the hobby. Now we have Prismatic Evolutions and Surging Sparks and Destined Rivals. Now you can see where I'm going with this, right? This is why that we got into the second jump now in January of 2025, where in October it was $224 of last year. January it managed to reach $450, $475, $81 on TCG Player in January. And then we had some price corrections throughout February, right? And we assumed we were going to stay at this price point for the next rest of the year, and that people would maybe chase after Destined Rivals and Surging Sparks and other sets, Prismatic Evolutions. But with so much demand and with limited supply in the hobby, and we were getting some reprints, right, of Surging Sparks and Twilight Masquerade, but those sets are still expensive. So people started buying this booster box again. And that's what kind of brought it to new territory, into the 500s and 600s. And this is uncharted territory. We have not had this set past $230 since June of last year. So about a year ago was its highest price point. And now we have a new price point and a new support line, at least of $450. But now this booster box, like we saw on TCG Player, is upwards to $600 to $700. So really some crazy things happening in the market right now, guys. Let's check out this Gengar, and then we'll look at the PSA 10 data. So for the year, it's up 43%. We could see that it's been trending in the downward direction since February. $744 down to $585. And if you look at the volume, you're still having, 5 to 20 copies of this card being sold throughout April and May. 20 copies being sold is quite a lot. And you can see the volume on this right side of the graph is actually increasing as the price is decreasing this past month since February. And so we'll look at the chart a little closer. And if we look back here in September, this was a $300 card. It started, look at all this volume right here behind the graph. You see those bars. So much more copies were being sold, from 10 to 20 every few days. So the price point started going up all the way up to $732, and you still had people buying cards at that price point. You could see 7 copies sold for $697. Now the price has dropped from $744 back in February, 10 copies sold for that price, down to $585. And now you have 20 copies being sold for $585. If we look at the last month, it is down 8%. If we look at the last 3 months, it's down 21%. And if you look at the last 6 months, it's up 51%. So it's lost almost half of its value in the past 3 months, or half of the gains that this card, I guess in the past 6 months, it's actually up 51%. So I'll backtrack on that. But still, pretty big price correction from $735 down to $585. And again, in the past 3 months, it's down 21% from $739 all the way down to $583. If we look at the recent sales, look at those copies. You have multiple copies being sold at $600, $668, $632, $642. So quite a lot of copies are still being sold higher than the market price. And, that's mainly because look at what's on the market. There's only some cards on the market, and they're all above $600, which is why it's, still a $600 card. Now let's go ahead and look at the PSA 10 data right here. there's almost 10,000 PSA 10s and there's about 5,000 PSA 9s. And this is the all-time data for this card, you guys. The highest price point it saw was $763 back in May 2024, so about a year ago, and that was during that alternate art boom. It price corrected in the summer of last year down to the 500s, the mid 500s, so it lost about $200 in value. And then since last summer into the winter, it started going back up in the upward direction, and then towards December reached a new all-time high of $871. And then now it's been able to reach a new all-time high in January of this year, $1,504 in January. And then in February, we saw some price corrections down into the 1300s and then the 1200s in April. And then now we're looking at the low 1200s in May. So it's price corrected rather significantly. If we look at the last month, you can see right there, the last 6 months, it was trending in the upward direction. And now it's somewhat stable at that $1,200 price point. We'll see if it goes below $1,200. But as of right now, it's a $1,200 card in a PSA 10. Next, we have the Espeon VMAX. A lot of people prefer this card over the Umbreon VMAX. For me, it's hard to tell. I personally like the Glaceon Sylveon. I actually have the Sylveon up there. Anyways, this card is up 45% in the last year. And look at this chart right here. You could see just how high this card was able to get up in that alternate art boom, all the way up to $344 last year in June. 24 copies sold at that $300 price point. Managed to price correct all the way down now, or in October of last year, to $184. 10 copies were sold for $184 in October of 2024. And then in December, the price recovered to $240. You had 14 copies sold, and then all the way up to $333. You had 4 copies sold. And look at the volume. You could see right here, as the price got more expensive, and look at how much people were just buying up this card, started shooting up the price. You can see that the volume in the past 3 to 4 months has decreased significantly. And so that's kind of what's starting to bring this price down. You can see it's down almost 3% in the last month. If we look at the last 3 months, it's only down 1%. So it's still kind of going through some price corrections, really, really small price corrections though. So we'll hopefully see this card drop a little bit more and at least kind of see somewhat of a stable price point. And we'll just have to find out, because this card hasn't had too much of a stable price point in the last year. You can see that he was either trending in the downward direction and then going up in the upward direction. So gosh, I don't know when we're going to see some stability in the market, but especially for these cards right now that are older from Sword and Shield, people are really looking to get them and add them into their collection before they get more expensive. And so it just definitely does depend on the card, and especially these big chase cards. These are the cards that you want to get when they're cheaper in the, I don't know, in the 200s to 100s, maybe even low 300s. After it goes up to upwards of 300s, it'll still go up and then see some price corrections. But in my opinion, I feel like they eventually go to the 500s and 600s. It just depends on how popular that Pokemon is, and also the gem rates. How easy is it to grade? Is it more difficult to grade? And basically the demand for that PSA 10. And so here's the PSA 10 data. You could see that this, like we talked about, this set came out back in 2021 in October, so it's almost 4 years old. So we have a lot of data for this card. It was expensive in the 400s post-release in a PSA 10. Then in 2023, it was in the 300s. 2024 managed to get down into the mid 200s. And then 2024 recovered during the summertime into the high 300s. And then again, 2024 in the fall, in November, managed to get down to $326. And then we saw that December price spike into the 400s. And then January recently, it started reaching, you could see right there, close to its all-time high into the 500s. And then February, it got into a new all-time high for this card in a PSA 10 at $691. And since then, it's price corrected from $691 down now to $508. We even have some sales for $481. So, it's a $500 PSA 10. Back in January, it was upwards of $650. And so, it's lost $150 in the past 5 months. So we'll see if we see some more price corrections for that Espeon. Next, we have the Mew VMAX. This card was, like I said earlier, $60 for the longest time. And then even in that Alternar boom, it didn't go up that high, only to $101, and then quickly came back down to the 70s. And then now it's recently in December hit the 120s, January the 160s, February saw an all-time high to $207. And since then, it's price corrected down to $133. It's down 16% in the last month, 26% drop in the last 3 months. That Mew VMAX, and again, the VMAXs have the harder hit rates when you're ripping packs to try and get those VMAXs. They're a little more difficult to pull. Here we have the Mew V card, similar thing. This card was in the low 30s last year in September, and then in December got to $48. January, February jumped up to $77 and is now price corrected down into the 50s with the market price at $57. And people are still buying this card. 14 copies sold for $57. If we look at the last month, it's price corrected by 2%. And then in the last 3 months, it's lost 26% of its value, going down from $76 into the 50s. So pretty decent price corrections for this card. We'll have to find out if it stabilizes at $60 or if it goes down to $50, but only time will tell in the next few months. Here's the VMAX Secret Rare card. Rainbow Rares aren't that popular again, but this is a Mew card, and specifically a Mew VMAX card. And so this card is up 44% in the last year. You can see that it reached a low in September 2024, down to $33. And then it got up to $45 in January, $55 in March, and is now price corrected down to $49. You can see that it's trending in the downward direction for the past month. It's lost 10% of value, and in the last 3 months, not even a percentage lost in value. But you can see how volatile this card does look, because 3 months ago it was $49, went up to $54, and then now $49. So not too crazy of a shift in terms of dollars, but still notable to see. Only time will tell if this card will, stay at around $50 or eventually go back to $33, just because Rainbow Rares aren't the most popular card rarity. Here we have the Celebi V card. Really pretty card. I really like it. You can see that, look at the volume. You just have like 20 to 50 copies being sold throughout the last year. For the year, it's up 13%. So it's price corrected really heavily. You could tell right here back in January, it was a $61 card. Now it's a $48 card. But look at this price jump right here in September of last year and November of last year. It was selling for $27, managed to get all the way up to $61, and now is a $48 card. So for the past 3 months, it has dropped 20%. And in the last month, it's only dropped 5%. Next, we have the Inteleon VMAX card, another card that I still don't have in my collection. Same thing, it's seen some price corrections in the past 3 months. It's actually gone up 12%, but in the last month, it's lost 4% of value. And so, this card topped out in March at $31 and has now price corrected down to $27. But that's still a significant gain from November 2024. It was an $18 card, got all the way up to $30, and now it's a $27 card. So it's already had its own price corrections. We'll see where it stabilizes at. Maybe it'll be at around $28 to $25. We will have to see. And here's our last card, the Genesect V card. It's up 15% for the last year. Back in October of last year, it was $13, jumped up to $26 this year in March, and is now down to $21. If we look at the last month, it's down 4.7%, and the last 3 months, 8.5%. Also, a really cool card that over time, I'm liking it more and more, especially because I'm thinking about getting the Plasma Rarity Full Art, the Genesect Plasma. It's only like a $40 card near mint. and it's a really old card from 2013, so I'm kind of interested in getting that card right there. But again, going back to the set overall, $1,400 in set value, and the booster box is now $649. So really interesting to see what Sword and Shield is doing right now. All these sets are going up. You even have Silver Tempest, only $851 of value, but the booster box has gone up to $318. So we know Fusion Strike is a really popular set. Let me know what set is your favorite from Sword and Shield, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.